Eric Murray needs no introduction, but he does.
Murray and Bond have another Olympic gold medal. They just keep cranking through. They are streets ahead of the field.
And we welcomed him to the program, the legend that is Eric Murray. G'day, mate. How are you?
G'day, Martin. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to hear too. Look, I mean, I love that piece of commentary. I hope that you never ever get sick of the fact that people like me and New Zealand sports fans are going to gush every time they see you, mate.
I know, yeah, it is quite surreal. Shit, it feels like it's been a while ago now, though. You know, and Hamish has got another one under his belt above me. So, but hey, that's just the way it rolls.
Yeah, you know, you were able to walk away. Him not. He's just absolutely addicted to this. What's the, tell us just in human terms, what's the difference between the two of you? Why is that?
4 years difference. This is one thing I'll always say. If we'd joined forces 4 years earlier, things might have been different at Beijing in 2008, and then, potentially maybe we'd still be going, we would have done Tokyo together, or maybe not. We might have both been finished. I don't know. But I guess that age difference, that 4 years was that, and he just wasn't ready to finish. I was 36 finishing up in Rio, and Bondi was only 32, so he was like hitting his straps, and he was like, I just want to carry on. And so that was probably the main thing, and now he's figured that he's got 3 kids on the ground. He's got it. I don't think I could go do that again.
Oh, look, I laugh, mate. I tell you, all of us ours are grown up, of course, is that. Oh, look, I absolutely laugh. I mean, that's keeping him busy, isn't it? How long can you go on and row for at the level that you attained and achieved? I mean, what kind of age? Is there a limit?
I think there's been a few people in their 40s that have won Olympic medals. I'd struggle to say there's only been 1 or 2 maybe over 40 that have won Olympic gold. But I definitely think between that sort of, between 30 and I'd say 36, 37 is definitely your peak time. You just know how to sustain, you know how to train, you know what needs to be done. And it definitely is the age bracket where you can do the most, be the most successful for sure. Wow.
36 and 37. See, I would have thought that 10 years younger in terms of your physical strength and things. So you actually, explain that to us. So you actually were stronger then.
So I was doing my fastest times on rowing machine and testing and other bits and pieces, probably 2015, 2016. So I was going as fast as I'd ever gone before, right up until Rio when I was 35, 36. And I just think there's that maturity that comes in with it, knowing how things need to be done. And was it harder? Absolutely. The body felt like it took a little bit longer to recover and other bits and pieces. But at the same time, I definitely thought that was some of my best work for sure.
Eric Murray, world champion. I'm only on here till 6 o'clock. I mean, I'm going to run out. And then, of course, so where did the determination and the single-mindedness of purpose come from, mate, to actually to do this for as long as you did?
I feel like when we were... I don't think that I could have done this by myself, and I'll make that plain and clear. I don't think I could have been in a single scull. I think that's a different mindset, and I don't think 2 Eric Murrays would have been as good as Eric and Hamish. And even Hamish will openly admit that he doesn't think that 2 Hamish Bonds would have been as good as Eric and Hamish. But we just found something that was magical, and in a way, I think it is very rare that you get 2 people that just work together. Things go well and you just see the magic, because I have no other way to explain the fact that we never got beaten for 70 odd races. It just doesn't happen. And it was just down to the fact that we were just working together, trying to do as much as we could together, as fast as we could, pig-headedness together, trust one another 100%. And the results spoke for themselves.
Did you ever have a fear of losing? I remember Sean Fitzpatrick, it's always stuck with me. He said that as an All Black captain, he went on with the fear of losing. People might think that's a negative thing, but he actually used it as a motivation thing. Did you ever have that?
Yep. In 2010, so we were second year into our campaign. We were going into races going, we better, make sure we don't lose today. We've got to beat these guys, whatever. And we nearly got unstuck here at Karapiro, closest ever race we had. We won by 0.3 of a second. It's ridiculous. And then we just turned the mindset around to be like, you know what? Let's just be. And we spoke to a few people and they were just like, look, just go. Doesn't matter if it's a prelim race, second round, third round, whatever you got to do. Just race as hard as you can and as fast as you can, And if anybody else can beat you, then like they're a better crew. And so that was our philosophy going forward, was just like, let's just race every race to the best of our ability, and then and we'll see how it goes. Like, you know, if someone's in front of us, we're going to we'll take it on the chin. But we never had to get to that point where we just started attacking every single race. You know, you'll always hear people saying, "Oh, just do enough to get to the next round. Just do enough to get to the next round." We threw that book out the door, and we were just like, we're just going to go 100 every time.
Was it, you know, with I suppose the fear of failure, do you have to kind of accept that to get to the top of the ladder that you might fall off that ladder? To reach those stars, you've got to reach out, and it gets a bit scary. Did that ever come in?
No, I think we had a lot of learnings in the first few years, you know, when I was younger, you know, like thinking too far ahead, you know, Rugby World Cup 2007, you know, we're already in the final before even the competition started. We had a few of those moments, you know. It's like, oh, okay, sweet, you know, this is going to be a fun final against these guys, and you're not in it. And so we just made sure that you just have to think of one step at a time. Can't get too far ahead of yourself. Like, if you start looking too far into the future, like, things happen, you know, and sometimes are the most random scenarios, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. You know, and we see that in a lot of sporting arenas where something goes wrong, and then all of a sudden the favourite who's meant to be winning is not there. And you're like, wow, where'd that happen? You know, and so we just tried to make sure that didn't come into our equation.
Look, I remember Sergei Bubka out of everything. I mean, he broke every single pole vault record, didn't he? But he just couldn't actually perform at the Olympic Games. It was just one of those things. In terms of you guys, you know, the Olympics, the World Championships, you know, where does the Olympics sit? Does it sit way above everything else?
Oh, yeah, top of the pops. There's most Olympic sports, I think, you know, like everybody would say that there's nothing bigger. Like, you can't, and the whole thing, exactly what you said there, like trying to commit to a 4-year cycle, to sit down after an Olympic Games and go, right, in 4 years' time, I'm not missing out, I'm not doing that. And then the only opportunity, again, if you don't do it, is 4 years' time. It's a lot of work. There's so much time, so many days. And so, yeah, that's the stressful part, is knowing that if it doesn't quite pay out as you hope, the next opportunity, you're 4 years older, there's been a lot of water under the bridge. And that's what really, I think, takes its toll, especially in Olympic sports, is that time between drinks is massive. You know, like, you can have world champs and they come around most, you know, once a year, or big events, you know, like athletics, there's Com Games with world champs or whatever else. Whereas like with a lot of other sports, you know, it's once every 4 years, like, that's it.
Yeah, like, you know, just trying to get to the head around this, and actually think everything rides on that particular thing. I suppose when you're rowing like you are, you can actually see the competition in the distance there. You know, how exhilarating was it? At what stages did you actually think to yourselves, we've got this, or did that never happen till you heard the buzz?
There's a funny piece just before in London, and we had about 2 strokes to the line, and I looked across because, like, you know, just having a nosy how close the line was, and I basically said it's ours, and you can see me mouth it, and we still had 2 strokes to go. And Hamish used to be like,
I want to see this on YouTube,
and I said, mate, if we had fallen out, we would have drifted over the line, and we had about 6 seconds on everyone else anyway. Yes. And he's like, still.
Oh, he gave it to you afterwards. Hey, shut up, don't say that. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, basically. And, you know, and so I think, you know, there was a lot of situations when we were racing. Yeah, we were well in front of everybody else, but it takes one stroke, one bad piece of steering, one. You know, like you're on the buoy line and you didn't quite realise it, and you've overcorrected, and then you catch a crab or something like that, and you're out. You know, like, things can happen very, very fast in rowing, and there's no recovery. So, you know, you always just got to keep your mind on until, you know, you hear the buzzer go at the start. You're focused until you hear that buzzer at the end, and you have to stay in that bubble. Otherwise, like, things can go wrong.
Eric Murray with us. One quick question, then we're just going to take a 1-minute news break. We'll come. So I've got so much more to ask you about this, and I'll move on from the Olympics and stuff like that. The blame game. Was there ever a time where the two of you, I mean, if something goes wrong or was going wrong, you only got him to blame, or do you blame yourself, or do you look internal first? How did you deal with that kind of stuff?
We didn't really have. We trusted one another 100%, and we very early on would look internally and say, okay, something's not quite right in the boat. What can I do to help? Like, if the balance is wrong, and Hamish is like, I'm really struggling with the balance, I'm like, well, what can I do? Like, what am I doing wrong that's helping you?
Right.
And I think that's what worked in the partnership, was the fact that both of us took ownership. If somebody else was struggling with something, if I was down or mate, I'm tired, on whatever, he'll be like, that's fine, let's just get through this session, let's cut it a bit shorter, let's get it done properly, but, whatever. I think that's really, we were able to bounce off each other in that respect.
Eric Murray, we're going to put you on hold for just a second. We're going to go to the news. We're going to come back. You're listening to our world champion and multi-Olympic gold medalist, Eric Murray, one half of him and Hamish Bond, of course, never beaten in that boat. So much more to ask him about. I want to ask him about the Black Ferns. I want to ask him about the netball. I want to ask him about the teams in Aussie. I want to ask him, obviously, about the Dancing with the Stars that he's doing and the amount of training. And I tell you what, having done this myself, it is actually quite a physical thing to actually get through that. Eric Murray, really special guest on the platform at the moment. Eric Murray is one of those, and he rejoins us. Welcome back. He's in the background there, isn't he? Yeah, he's in the background. He's obviously doing something. Eric, can you hear? Hello. He sounds like he's in the kitchen or something, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah.
Paging Eric.
He's banging something around.
I'm assuming we're still here, Lachlan.
Yeah, we're here.
Yes.
You there? G'day. Can you hear me, mate?
Oh, here we are.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so... yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I jumped into my boy's iPad there for a second.
Oh, you see, what are you trying to do to pretend that you know about technology, mate? Come on. Hey, I just want to touch a couple of other things on the Olympics, Eric. And look, having been fortunate enough to, go and be employed to cover, the Olympics for Radio Sport at the time and that, watching a New Zealander win a gold medal, I get shivers down my spine even thinking about it now. That national anthem, plays and the flag goes up and stuff like that. It's a moment that I wish I could transport or teleport every single sports fan in the country to. Just describe what it's like standing on that podium and what do you feel?
Yeah, it's quite surreal because, to be fair, it happens very fast, and it was I think it was just before London, and Rob Waddell had said to us, he goes, boys, have a good race, and and if you win, things happen very fast, so take in the moment. And it literally was, like you get up there and you hear the national anthem and you're just like, you're watching and you're in the moment going, wow, we've done it, and but as quickly as the national anthem's over, it's like off the dais, moment's over, next one's on.
Right.
And then, but after that, you've got like so much that goes through your head. And so you start to think about the process and what you've achieved afterwards. You're not talking about just the race. That was, you think about the execution. And most people, I'm not sure, but I've never really heard of anybody that said, we did the absolute perfect race today, and executed it, because it's generally not, because there's so much stress and anxiety and all the other shit that goes on.
Yep.
And so, we had raced a good race. I wouldn't say it was our best ever, and yet we still won the gold medal. And then you're just thinking about the moment afterwards, and you just look back and you go, I remember, the shit we went through with Dick and the coach and bloody everything else, and the time away from home, like your opportunity costs to do it and everything else. And you're just like, wow, I remember thinking about this when I watched like so-and-so or Rob on TV in year 2000, and here I am 12 years later, And so you just get those sort of thoughts that go through your head, and then it just carries on for such a long period of time. And I think that's the main thing, is that it carries on and on and on and on and on, and it just keeps going. Like that's the whole thing with it.
Look, I don't want to tell tales about Dick Tonk, your coach, as well, but it's interesting that you bring that up, and especially with what we've had with this Black Ferns review over the last couple of weeks. Now, look, I'm one of the few people that actually will go into bat for Glenn Moore, because one of the frustrating things for me that came out of this is we never really heard his side of the story. And look, and I know that when it comes to high performance anything, and I work in a performance industry, and you get bawled out by your boss at various times, you've got to grow a bit of a skin. You've got to actually, look, I know that the harden up expression gets overused and things, but you've actually got to absorb this and actually tolerate this. And I know that, there must have been times where that happened with you as well. And instead of writing an Instagram post and having a review about it, what are your thoughts on that? And just in terms of elite sport, the relationship between the coach and the player.
Yeah, it's such a difficult conversation. Do I think that some people have been treated badly? Yes. Do I think people need to build a bit of resilience? 100%. Okay, so it's just where does that line come? Where does that line cross? And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it in any way, shape, or form. But you generally hear this from the people that are on the cut line. Am I right?
Yes.
You
Totally.
know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like, yeah, and so I think that's...
Look, let me just interrupt for a second. Takura would never have posted that if she was still playing. She'd been dropped from the team, cut the contract and everything else. And look, I'm not belittling any experience that woman has gone through, but I'm just, I actually do want to know the truth about what actually went on, but keep going, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and that's the issue, like, did some of that was there a roll-on effect because of that, and I think that's the hard part of the topic and the conversation to talk about is the fact that, the thing is with a coach, like if you're not pushing your athletes, if you're a boss and you're not pushing on your employees, are you wanting mediocre? Now, I truly believe that coaches aren't out there to belittle athletes. They're not out there to bully athletes. They're out there to push people to try and find where their breaking points are. Because at the end of the day, if you're not pushing people to get to their best where they are, how do you know how good they can be? How far can they run? How fast can they, all this sort of stuff. And yes, but then what happens is, have you found people's breaking points too early and then kept pushing them? And that's where you get the conversation. I just think there's so much of that needs to be employed in this sort of conversation.
What a relief hearing you say that. To me, it is about tolerance. Again, it's about adults having conversations. And the most disappointing thing about this review, which I just think was a lot of hot air and nothing else, was they never interviewed either person about the comments, about what context they were said in. And, for the amount of money that they've spent, they never got these two people, they never got Glenn and they never got Takura to sit down, even privately or with somebody else in the room and say, do you two want to resolve this before you move on in your lives? Which is a really sad thing for me, because I actually believe that that's probably an itch that both of them want to scratch.
Yeah, and this is the issue with a lot of, like the reviews and stuff that come out of it. You get recommendations like, this could be done better and that could have been done better. But that's just like in general life, I could have handled this situation a bit better or whatever. And you can always pick fault once things have been done. And as I say, at the end of the day, there's no real winners in the situation.
No.
It's looking, and you look forward and say, okay, well, how can we make this better? Because I'm just, and I'll be open and honest. Like I'm very old school in my mentality, probably because I came through. I wouldn't say I'm the old school, but I'm definitely like, you need to be pushed hard. You need to build some resilience.
Because that's worked for you. That's worked for you, right? And your coaches knew how to touch you. And what you said before is so perceptive, because you've got to find that. But perhaps if something has gone over the top or you've lost that person, that's what to me appeared out of this, is that she had been lost and no one was able to. And I actually look at all her teammates as well and all of her supposedly close brethren and all of that. Well, why didn't one of them step in and actually recognise what was going on in the poor woman's head?
Yeah, and I just think that moving forward with any sport and anything, transparency often is the place where things don't go right. It's like, you do your fitness testing, you put it up on the board. Here's number 1 in the squad. Here's number 30 in your runs, right? In your Broncos.
Yeah. And
then in the gym, who's the best bench presser? Who's the best squatter? Who's the best this? And you put it up there black and white. So then when you go, we did the 3K run and you were 23rd. Do you think you're going to make it in the team? Now if you're 5th on the list for all of those and you don't make the team, now you've got a conversation to start of like, hang on, I don't think I'm being fairly treated.
Yeah. And
I think that's just the case. But, it is. This is a great conversation around the barbecue with the beers.
Isn't it?
It just never stops, never stops.
No, and it shouldn't either, because the reason it shouldn't stop is because I don't have a kind of hero and a villain out of this. I just feel really sad for both of those people, because we seem to have lost Takura. We don't know where she is. I mean, she hasn't spoken. No one's actually talked to her. And at the same time, Glenn Moore, who was a World Championship winning coach, and it took about a week before I saw something on the news of a couple of other Black Ferns players were interviewed on telly, and they spoke so highly of him. And then it was about 2 weeks later, I was reading a News Hub story, and for the very first time at the end of the story, they said he vehemently denies the allegations, and that hadn't been. It was just a social media pile-on, and Alice Soper is one of the screamers who is out there, on every other media being quoted, and I like Alice and everything, but rather than just dive all over the person, to me there was a lot more under the surface of the swimming pool. If we were kind and reasonable and tolerant, we could actually talk about this. But instead, that poor bloke's career's gone, his reputation's gone, and I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it was fair the way that she was treated. But sometimes life isn't fair. I mean, I don't have to tell you that, right?
Yeah, and I think you've nailed it there. Like that generally is the case, that it's not fair. A lot of people aren't going to get what they want. But at the end of the day, it's just such a shit situation, because it's like he said, she said, this is that. I saw nothing. I saw a lot. So you're like, where do you go? Like, what side of the equation?
You act like adults, I think, is what you do. And the first thing there, that's so disappointing about the rugby union. It's just to me, it's just such a, I don't know, it's such a pissant weak thing to do, where you just get a review and get somebody else to do it. Hey, you're the CEO. Show some, work this situation out. But anyway, let's move on from that. I want to talk about Dancing with the Stars, because that in 2008, I won that thing. And cut it out, Lachlan. I wasn't the first voted off, Eric, and that's the fearful thing, isn't it, being the first voted off?
Yeah, mate, I got to say, I've done some pretty crazy things, and I'd like to say, one of the biggest things that I've done with my rowing career and then afterwards is I've sort of tried to give back as much as I can, and I got a boy with autism, and so I try and help out a lot with the charities, and now I'm patron of Autism New Zealand, and you jump on TV, you go to fundraisers, you go and talk, tell your story.
Well, you did the Fight for Life and everything as well, mate, which was brilliant.
100%, and everybody's a winner. And so when the dancing came up, I thought, right, this is an amazing platform to be able to help some charities, raise some money, and all I've got to do is put some bloody dancing shoes on. But then I didn't quite realise how shit of a dancer I was. That's one. And then just how much time, like to try and get as much time in as you possibly can, just so you don't look like a twat. Is pretty much like what I've been trying to do. And so far, we've done a pretty good job, and it just shows as well. Anyone listening, vote. Remember, text Eric to 3333.
3333.
Because at the end of the day, it is about getting the votes, keeping you in the game. And I think I'd like to think I appeal to the dad demographic.
You do, pal.
Like just a general bloke, bloody, loves his beers, loves whatever. And that's what we're about, and we're doing it I'm doing it for my kid, and a lot of people are doing it for their other charities. And, if I can go out there and get in front of it and do it, it's a great platform to be able to do that.
Look, at the time, I remember talking about it with my wife, Andy, and she said, look, you're the one person out of all of these people that when the red light goes on and you're live, you can probably handle that because you've done broadcasting, right? And it was kind of like, can you learn how to put one foot in front of the other in some kind of coordinated effort on a dance floor? That was the dodgy bit. But look, and look, this is one thing that I want to convey to the audience as well. You can rehearse and everything. That red light, it's just a silly old red light goes on, mate, and I tell you what, I watched people freeze in front of it. It is actually quite a moment, isn't it, when there's a few 100,000 people watching and you got 90 seconds to play.
Yeah, it is, and I've been in some high stress situations. So but at the same time, and even when we were talking before about the rowing and stuff, I've always been realistic about my expectations. Like if we'd gone into an event and Hamish had been injured, or if I'd been sick or whatever, I'd be like, we're not at our best. This is going to be an interesting situation. Our times and our testing have not been up on what we'd like it to be. And so we go into these shows, and I'm like, what, I'm okay. I think we might get a 20. I'll have a rough idea. Hopefully we get some 6s and 7s. But that's really what I know is I'm like, I'm not getting my feet right. I'm not moving my body the way it should be, whatever. And that's fine. That's fine with me, And so I'm at the same time, even though I love that pressure environment and I know how to handle it, you still got to have that realistic expectation, because I think that's where people get stuck in terms of the freezing moment and everything, is because they're so wound up about trying to look their absolute best. And you've got to be like, yeah, but how's it been going in training? Have you done a full clean run without screwing something up?
Yeah, you're bang on. And it's so far out of the comfort zone. That's what got me. And, I'll tell you a couple of things, ladies and gentlemen. They put you in these shirts where they want to accentuate your nipple and things. That's a kind of a weird kind of space to be in for a start, right? You're wearing some heels, mate. You're dancing in some heels. When's the last time you wore those?
Yeah, the old Latin shoes have got a 2-inch bloody heel on them. It's crazy.
And also, I don't know whether they still do. They put us in teddies, the lingerie thing, the teddy. You had to wear one of those. Some of us still like wearing them. Saying, but that was a little weird to handle to start with.
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's the makeup and the hair and the lighting and everything else. It's like, wow, here we go. And the problem I've got is I'm a sweater, eh? And you're in the you're in the studio, and it's about 45 degrees with all the cameras and the fans going, and they're trying to pump aircon in there, and it's like, nah, not happening, pal. And then of course you've got to go out there and stand there and dance around, and then you do a minute 30, and it's like doing a minute 30 sprint or something. You have lost breath afterwards, and you're like, wow. And then you just sit there, and it's sweat's pouring off you, and you're like going, man, this is going to look so bad on TV. It's like,
but it's quite an adrenaline rush afterwards once you do it, isn't it? And then you parade in front of the judges. And of course, look, I remember one of the judges just said to me, he said, you got as much sex as a plank going on. I was just like, I was just sitting there going, dude, for a start, it's Dancing with the Stars. I'm not a star. And the other bit is I can't dance. Cut me some slack here, pal.
Yep, no, and that's exactly right. And at the end of the day, I think it's a great bit of entertainment, and you've got to remember that it is entertainment. It's not like what do you get if you win out of it? Okay, cool, you won Dancing with the Stars. And that's the thing, and I've read the articles about everyone going, the money for charity, like everyone's getting paid to do the show. I'm like, yeah, well,
of course.
How else am I meant to do the show, and take time off work?
That's it.
What, just do it for nothing?
Yeah.
It's like, so yeah, like they're paying us a little bit of cash to be able to do it. But at the end of the day, like the amount of money that we can raise through the public for all these organisations is so much bigger than what they're doing for us.
Okay, just before you go then, I just want to touch on the autism thing. And for everyone who's listening who has or has experience of or has somebody in their family or something, how difficult is it? How much love is involved in this? And I suppose, you don't know anything else apart from this with your son.
Yeah, like when you get, like when we got a diagnosis of Zach being, on the autism spectrum, we were like, oh well, like they basically, it's a hard place because there's not a lot of, there's some resources and support around, but it's not, and hence why I've got into the organisation to try and help out.
Yep.
Like it takes a bit of time, you feel a bit lost, and then you've got to start navigating your way through. But it's basically just a different operating system, it's all it is. And people have a different pathway in life and the way that they're going to grow up and be members of society. And it's just going to be completely different for like my boy and other people, with neurodiversity.
Mm. I just want to finish on this. You married Jackie, and Jackie is the eldest daughter of Gary Robertson. Gary was a member of the 72 New Zealand rowing eight that won gold in Munich. And when you think about the East Germans and the cheating that was going on and all of that kind of stuff, I mean, it's an extraordinary achievement. And I always say to people, the favourite thing ever that I've witnessed at the Olympics, apart from the gold medals, is hearing that whump of the eights when they're coming up from the course. You hear the whump before you see the boats. You know what I'm saying, don't you?
Yeah, and that was, when Hamish was going back into the eight, he came around a couple of times saying, "You sure you don't want to come back? You sure you don't want to be involved?" And there was some bits of me, that were just going, "Oh, mate, I would love to, like be involved," but life had just moved on, and I'd signed off. From the rowing side.
Sure.
Didn't mean that I didn't sit here for a few nights and go through, a bit of due diligence. Like, okay, how would this work? Like, could I get fit? I rang up my physiologist that did all our stuff through London and Rio years, and I said, mate, do you think I could get to be pretty fit to get in the eight for Tokyo? And he's like, oh, well, you won't be as good as you were in Rio, but I could get you pretty close. Wow. And so I was like, okay, here we go. But then just thinking about life admin and Zach and everything else that was going on, I was like, nah, not going to happen. And, and that's one thing. So, it's not, I don't regret that I didn't do it, but I definitely thought about it. And that's the thing, the thing with in rowing and a lot of other sports, it's even like, say kayaking, as you like, it's Lisa, she's in that. But when you're in the K4, it's New Zealand.
Yeah.
And that's the same with rowing. It's like Mahe, Emma, they're in the single. When you hear the eight, men's New Zealand eight, New Zealand women's eight, and it's a very country versus country, rather than that. Yeah, and that's the situation around it, and it's just you get that more country vibe, squad vibe than you do an individual like Hamish and myself.
Just amazing, extraordinary. Look, we thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I could sit here and chat with you for hours. Yeah, I'm just a massive fanboy, you know that, and you're a hero to so many of us. Good luck on Dancing with the Stars. Give it to me again. It's 3333, right?
Yep, that's it. Text Eric to 3333.
Good on you. Thank you so much. That is Eric Murray.